Support Three Beards Media, and I would love to work with you. If you need merchandise for your company, organization, band, softball team, whatever, I can help. From name brand apparel to promotional items, large orders or small, online stores, and more, I can help your brand stand out. AKC Marketing is local, based in Johnston, and we are an employee-owned business, so our costs are low and our turnaround times are fast. But most importantly, we give you personal service to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. Email me at andrew@akcmarketing.com or find me on social media, and let's make some cool stuff together. Now sit back and enjoy this Three Beards Media podcast.
All right, welcome back to In the Side of the Storm, where we talk all things Cyclones. We are live from the AKC Marketing Studio with Andrew Downs and sponsored by our friends at Revelton Distillery out of Osceola, Iowa. I'm Dave Larson here with my Storm team partner, Marcus Pfizer. Marcus, how are you?
Doing well, Dave. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. We're going to be joined here by another Cyclone great, Marcus Pfizer, or Brent Curvey. Sorry about that, Marcus. But first, we have a fun one for you tonight, everyone. Tonight, we have another legend here with Cyclone Radio Network's Eric Heft. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well, enjoying this beautiful weather.
Oh, it is absolutely remarkable, and we're coming off the heels of a big game, first home game of the season, first game really for this year's football team. The Cyclones defeated North Dakota. I think I called them North Dakota State and the Fighting Sioux. I called them by every other name, but their actual name last week, 21-3 in a good game, I think, by the Cyclones, but some key losses that we walked away from, probably wondering what happened and how is this going to affect the rest of the season. What were some of the things that you took away from Saturday's game, Eric?
Well, I thought the start was great. I think everybody would agree with that. If you look at some of the video of the catch from the end zone that Jalen Knoll made, it's like, how the hell is that even possible? It was just crazy. Tremendous play and then a touchdown. And then, you could take a nap for a while, and then you get to that last drive of the first half. I guess the thing, I was hoping for maybe more physical play from the offensive and defensive fronts, but first game and a lot of mixing and matching, especially in that offensive line. That's certainly part of it. But what I was impressed with was after we had that drive that was about 12 and a half minutes long. First of all, they got off the field, only gave up a field goal, but you hadn't been on the field for a long time. It's right before halftime. You got about 3 minutes left. And North Dakota's going to get the ball to start the second half. And you're up 7-3. You need to do something. And Iowa State did. I thought the response there was great. And so when they had to do it, I thought they did really well. I thought Rocco didn't play his best game, but his best game was 20 of 26 for 267 yards. So that's not bad. So he's going to have an unbelievable year. He's got great weapons around him. And then the second half was kind of boring, to be honest. It just wasn't a lot. But when Iowa State had a chance to put together a drive, they did put the game out of reach. And I think they probably could have scored again. They were loading the box. And, I think if Iowa State wanted to tack on another one in the fourth quarter, they could have. But, that's not Matt's style. And I'm totally fine with that. But so all in all, First games have not been maybe the greatest thing for Iowa State in recent years. So to come away with a pretty convincing win like last year, against UNI, I feel pretty good. I know there's work to be done for sure.
It felt like you were on our text chain. I think during the game, I'm sitting in the stadium and Marcus and Brett were watching from home, and Chris Shipley was up in the corner watching as well. And I think we felt the same way, that it was pretty vanilla, pretty boring in the second half. I felt, we came out pretty strong, 2-play drive, touchdown. I felt like we could have thrown the ball as much as we wanted to, but there seemed to be a pullback of, okay, we still have to run the ball a few times here, fellas. And I don't know that we were all that effective in the run game. We were satisfactory, but not great. Yet at the same time, we only had 48 offensive plays in the entire game. I mean, how many times are we going to see that this season?
I mean, it was so skewed, and it's hard to really get a rhythm going, and the defense has to do its part too. They weren't able to get off the field. I mean, it was like, I think I described it in that 12 and a half minute drive, and they picked up six first downs, all by less than a yard or 1 or 2 yards. It's death by paper cuts. They're just kind of killing you, just kind of nibbling away. But that just exactly what North Dakota had to do. To stay in the game and give themselves a chance, but at the same time, it just didn't make it for exciting watching, to be honest.
Any thoughts on the offensive line? I mean, again, we didn't really seem to run the ball well, but I thought they were effective in the passing game.
We're playing a team that knows who they are. They're physical. I mean, they're maybe not quite as big, but they know how to play football. First thing when I saw we were playing North Dakota, I thought, thank God it's not North Dakota State. And of course, you realize then they beat North Dakota State by 25 points last year. So they've been a playoff team. So they have a culture. Their coach has been there 11 years. And they were going to stack the box. They were going to make us throw it, knowing that we weren't probably going to throw it a lot. So it kind of skewed that a little bit. Also, some musical chairs in the offensive line, too, with guys dinged up. Hazard's been dinged up. Jalen Travis. So you had other guys playing, and we played, I think, 8 or 9, maybe 10 different guys in the offensive line, still trying to find out who our best guys are. So all in all, once again, I would say, as last year, had some success running the football, but not maybe consistently enough. But they did pass protect very well a year ago, and I thought they did a very solid job with that Saturday. So, I mean, all in all, I give the offensive line an incomplete, but leaning toward certainly a passing grade.
Well, and that seems to be a hallmark of Matt Campbell teams, right? The offensive line really has a slow start, but they tend to gel midway towards the end of the years, particularly in October, November, where we see a lot of players to begin with, and then they start to either through injury or just there seems to be a filtering process that takes place in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season.
I think that's a fair analysis. That's kind of the way it's been. I think right now, I mean, how really good this Iowa State football team is going to be, that's one of the factors that's going to determine that. I think we've talked about it ad nauseum. The offensive line's got to take a step forward, and we need to get more pressure on the quarterback. I mean, those are a couple of things. And I also have to believe, and going into the season, I felt pretty good about our linebackers, but that was maybe a month ago. And now, with the injuries there, that may be a work in progress too, but I really trust the coaches there, and they think they've got good enough players. We're going to see if we can get them in the right spots.
Well, a big factor in the game was Caleb Bacon's injury. It seems that he's had surgery in the hospital, and it sounds like he may be out for an extended period of time, and we may see him late in the season, if at all. But yet we return Will McLaughlin. It looks like he was out for that North Dakota game, but may return in time for the Iowa game.
No.
El Brazina. Sounds like he's going to be back in. He's the heralded freshman that
yes.
I don't know how you could say is just as good as any freshman we've had when we've seen players like Mike Rose coming in and starting as a freshman. So that's maybe some level of optimism.
Sure. I think, Will McLaughlin's not going to play Saturday. It's going to be another, once again, hopefully Cale Brazina will be able to play. it's one of those things too. You really wish. I think Kale's going to be a terrific player. I kind of wish he'd had a chance to get his feet wet Saturday, but he was dinged up, and you don't want to take a chance. I totally get that too, but I expect him to play Saturday, and it's hey, why not come out on the big stage?
Marcus, what was it like sitting at home watching that game in that massive drive that took over 12 minutes by North Dakota?
The game started with a lot of excitement. Of course, we all were excited for the season to begin. But it really got slow. It got slow really quickly. And like you said, we were on the text chain, and it was just, we were trying to will some excitement out of it. Watching the guys make plays, watching Rocco, throw the ball. I was just trying to get some different pointers out of, well, maybe this is the first game and we're just going to focus on that. Next game is definitely going to be very important for us. So let them get the first game jitters out the way and just continue to play this game and get the dub. But it got real slow, real bad, real quick, and it was just like, I don't like to have that feeling. Like I would rather, be down and have suspense of coming back and making plays and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I found myself a lot of times, turning away, doing something else, and I don't particularly like to do that.
And Marcus, a question for you: did it remind you at all of any of Floyd or Eustachi's preseason games where you're playing somebody and it's kind of a struggle? Because I kind of remember seeing a couple of those too.
Absolutely. When you get in those type games, it's dangerous because those are preseason games, but this is actual regular season game. But you get in the game like that, and if they catch momentum, it's hard to get that momentum back. You want to stay locked in. You want to stay excited. You want it to be different than what practice has been. Sometimes it's similar when it seems like it, but I was just watching and just hoping that they didn't make a crazy play or get a pick off or something like that, and we ended up going 0-1.
I think it'll be real interesting to see how we match up against Iowa. Granted, they scored 40 points, but I have to see it more than one game. Iowa's offense has just not been very good over the last 5, 6, 7 seasons. Although it seems like they come out to play aggressive against Iowa State, so I'll be curious to see what that looks like. But on the flip side, Coach Mauser, he came out pretty aggressive in those first 2 plays, which I give him credit that in history we generally tend to hand it off to the running back up the middle for 2 yards and hand it off for 3 yards, and now another 3rd and long, and okay, we'll see what happens there. To come out and just be that aggressive, I'd love to see that. I think that's something that's going to keep the defense off guard, and I hope they come out and do the same thing against Iowa.
Well, I hope if Jalen's double covered, he doesn't make that throw down the middle against Iowa. Okay, it was great, but I don't know how often you want to go to that well. Especially when he had a couple guys open underneath that he could have probably gone to. But hey, he was excited, and it was great. But how we match up, of course their offense is better than last year. Come on. I'm a year older than I was a year ago. Some things are inevitable, have to be. Their offense was terrible. But they have a competent quarterback. McNamara was injured. Not that he was great before he was injured. They didn't really have a quarterback after that. They were really unsettled. And I think they're going to feel pretty good about it. On the other hand, they scored 6 points in the first half against Illinois State at home, and they forced 2 turnovers in that first half. Or maybe it was even 3 in the first half. So they really had the advantage they couldn't take care of. Couldn't really take care of business after that to get points on the scoreboard. Second half, the dam broke a little bit for Illinois State. But I think the big thing is just what I mentioned, what we hear the players talk about this week, and you'll hear it from now, until Saturday. Don't turn the ball over. If you go back over the history of the series, the last several years in particular, it's been the turnovers that have been the turning point. And it was the turning point for Illinois State last week, and they weren't going to beat Iowa anyway, but that certainly made it much more possible. So, but it's a fine line. It's a fine line you walk when you say we're not going to turn it over. Well, you can't just hand it off and get 2 yards. I mean, you have to still be willing to take some shots. You have to be willing to find ways to get Rocco Becht and the talented receivers that he has, get them to be factors in the game too. So while you don't want to turn it over, you can't just sit on it either. So we'll see how Mouse does that. I thought Mouse called a pretty good game for his first outing on Saturday for sure.
Well, I agree. And Marcus, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about momentum. That Iowa offense, they got that momentum in the second half that really propelled them. I'm more concerned maybe with not necessarily Iowa's efficiency on offense in the second half, but the confidence that now has been built because of what they saw last year. Both confidence in Cade McNamara, confidence in the players in their offense, the players' confidence in Cade McNamara. I just think that will have more of a powerful shift for that team overall than anything else that happened in that game.
Well, to me, with dealing with Iowa or Drake or whoever the hell we're playing, it always to me seems to be a toss-up. It doesn't matter, how good we were the year before or how good we're projected to be this year. We'll get in that game and it'll be 6-3 and somebody be winning the game. So it's always that dog match each and every time we face up against each other. And that's the thing that I like about it. I like that it's unpredictable. I don't like being on the losing side of that ordeal, but I like it. And I like it being unpredictable and being a competitive game. It seemed to be really competitive as of late, and that's what I'm looking forward to being this Saturday.
And Hef, like you said, a win's a win. You got to take it.
Yeah, that's right. And you talk about Iowa getting confidence, and that's certainly true. But they're going to be playing a different team, and I think Mike Tyson line. Everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face, and I hope Iowa State has that physicality to not literally do that, but to match that physicality right off the charts, be able to stuff the run game, and then let's see if you can make some plays against us. So I think that's going to be a big challenge for Iowa State. It'll be, stopping that run early in particular.
Does the fact that we're playing in Iowa City this year mean anything with this team?
I don't think so. I mean, we're on a 1-game winning streak in Kinnick. We haven't beaten them in Ames for quite a while, and there are enough guys on that team that played there. Hey, the other thing about this team is I think they won 4 road games last year. I mean, so the core group of this team knows what it's like, what you have to do, the challenges in particular of going on the road in a really loud environment. So I don't think it means as much as it might be if this was a really inexperienced team. Still a young team, but they're not totally inexperienced.
But do you think that building upon those successes from the past, playing on the road, will really help this team going into Iowa City, where you look across the NCAA, there's teams that just fall apart. They cannot win on the road. Matt Campbell's teams seem to find a way, whether it's focus or preparation for those road games. They have success more times than not.
Yeah, and that's been a real strength for Matt. It's something we hadn't really seen a lot of. So that's one of the things I appreciate most about Matt, because Marcus, you know this. It's great winning at home. That's fun, but nothing like stealing somebody's, ripping their heart out on the road.
Yeah, I always loved to play on the road. It was just a different vibe, different atmosphere. Some guys didn't play well on the road, and so I felt like that was my opportunity to step it up a lot more. I love the boos and the jeers and everything that came along with it, and I love being the victor at the end of that. So, like that win that we got down in Kansas is just having those type games, not expected, but coming out with that W is always a great thing. So I love playing. I tend to have my best games on. I felt like, even though if I had played well at home, I always felt like playing on the road was a thing that I love to do.
Takes a special kind of guy to be able to do that. Seriously, and we've had a number of them, and you were obviously one of them. But I mean, you got to have that right mentality, and that inner core belief. Hey, I'm better than those guys.
Yeah. And we showed that as of late, and we're going to continue to do that as well.
Before we take a quick sponsor break, I want to hear from both of you. Any takeaways from the Big 12 season thus far? I think there seemed to be a couple of surprises that I saw, but anything that you saw in the games that were played in week 1?
Well, I'll tell you what I saw was a couple of disappointments for the league. I thought Texas Tech, I mean, they had to go to triple overtime to beat Abilene Christian. Obviously, Houston with a loss. West Virginia thought they were going to be able to compete with Penn State. It didn't really work out for them that well. And, those are 3 on that end. What I thought was the best win, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, was Oklahoma State dominating South Dakota State. I know that they're FCS, but they are number 1. They've won back-to-back national championships. They've got the core. They've got a quarterback. It's going to be a first-round draft pick next year. And they housed them. I mean, they really handled them. So I think that might have been the most impressive. There were some, lopsided scores by the Arizona schools too. I don't know what to read into that, but I thought maybe 3 disappointments and everything else pretty much true to form.
Yeah, and the biggest thing to me was the disappointment, like you said, Eric, in Houston. Like I was telling the guys on the chat that my son, Marcus Jr., actually played. He played in junior high with Donovan Smith.
Okay.
Played basketball together. Him and Roman Dunze, who plays for the Bears, they all were on the same junior high basketball team. They're a couple years older than him. But, they pretty much grew up together. So I've been on Donovan since he was a young kid. I felt like he was a better basketball player than football player, but his dad played football. And so they ultimately wanted him to play football. He went to Bishop Gorman. Then he transferred to a school somewhere in Texas. And
played at Tech.
Yeah, and so I was disappointed in the game. I was looking forward to, even though UNLV has gotten better. But I mean, UNLV shouldn't be able to compete with a Big 12 school or a school like Houston. So for them to go into Houston and get that game was very disappointing to me.
And the way they did it, I mean, they just stoned them. I mean, shut them out. So
control the whole game.
Now
I tell you what, if Donovan wants to switch sports, I don't know that he might have been a good basketball player, but I'm not sure he's going to break into that Cougar lineup.
he could play though. He was a really, really good basketball player. But like I said, his dad played football. I think his dad actually played in the NFL a couple of seasons, if I remember. And so they wanted him to play football. I was trying to get him to. For me, whatever the kids have that future in, I'm going to say it one way or the other. Darnell Washington, who went to Georgia, is in the NFL now. He played on our AAU program, and every time he stepped on the floor, I told him, "Man, what are you doing out here? Like, you're an NFL player. Like, you need to get off the court." So I felt like Donovan was a better basketball player, but ultimately he chose football. So hopefully he can turn it around and continue to play and have success.
Hey, Marcus, you mentioned a football player. What about you? We ever had dreams of being an NFL tight end or defensive end, or are you going to be a quarterback?
He's a bigger football fan than he is a basketball fan.
Football is my favorite sport. Was my first love. I actually played quarterback growing up. And once I got to high school, I was bigger and taller than everyone. I could play basketball too, and so my dad just chose to make me stay on the basketball side. At the moment, I didn't know football players were my size. I'm from a small town in Louisiana, so it's not like Texas where you would see, those type of football players or anything like that. So, had I known football players were my size, I probably would have definitely stuck with football. I remember getting to Iowa State and running into one of the first time I met Reggie Hayward. And, Reggie about 6'6", 6'7". We were looking at each other in the eye. And Reggie could play basketball. He could get off the ground. He could jump and dunk and everything. So I thought he was going to be a guy that's, could be. He was like, no, man, I play football. And, his arms were – Reggie was huge. And so then I started realizing, whoa, man, if Reggie playing football and, playing defense, and then Andy Stensrud came in together. And Andy was about my size, maybe a little bit heavier, a little bit stronger and stuff. And so then I was really started thinking, but I was like, nah, it's a little too late for that. Let me go and stick with this basketball thing, and the rest is history.
You know, you might have been a good football player. I'm sure you would have. I don't know that you'd have been first team All American. So I'm happy you chose hoops.
Well, with my foot speed and my hands, I probably could have been something at the tight end, but we'll never know now.
And you got to live vicariously through Stevie Johnson, who ended up playing a year.
Right.
All right, we'll take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors.
Making great tasting bourbon requires the perfect combination of ingredients, conditions, and time. The longer it rests, the better it tastes. Revelton Distillery's new single barrel bourbon is made from 80% corn, sourced 100% from Iowa farmers. And unlike mass-produced bourbons, each barrel of Revelton's single barrel bourbon is unique, proofed on when it tastes best. As they like to say, it'll be ready when it's ready. And to ensure the highest standards of quality and flavor, owners Rob and Christy Taylor oversee the production and bottling. Every single barrel. Iowa born, Iowa aged, Iowa bottled. Try the new single barrel bourbon from Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
In 2023, a crack Green Beret named Dan Douglas retired his military command and promptly escaped to a full-time career in real estate. Today, this man is wanted by home buyers and sellers who want to survive the process without spending a fortune. If you have a home to sell or want to buy one, maybe you can hire Dan Douglas at Green Beret Realty. You can find him at greenberetrealty.com. greenberetrealty.com.
All right, we're back. You know, before we pivot to, I want to hear, Eric, and your background, and I have a feeling you've got some great stories that you can share about Marcus and vice versa. But boy, what a beautiful game and beautiful day at Jack Trice on Saturday. I mean, the weather, it was just blue skies all around, tailgating. I stopped by Chris Shipley's tailgate, and he had some Jello shots that Amy had created that represented each of the Three Beards Media programs, which was a lot of fun. I had way too many of those. It was good to see fans of our podcast stop by and say hello as well. I want to remind everybody we've got another live event coming up on Saturday as we preview the CyHawk game at 10 o'clock from Coaches Kalaches. So that, and there we go. We got the CEO, Conrad Howley. He's going to be there as well. So come on out, meet Conrad, and you can also meet Dan Davis there with Green Beret Realty, or Dan Douglas, excuse me. I heard the podcast last night. He was on Old Man Strength. That guy, he's got some great stories to tell about the military life and how he got started. So please come on out on Saturday and meet us and the crew from this show, Inside the Storm. So, Eric, I was reading – you actually played in the very first game at Hilton Coliseum.
That is correct. That was my first varsity game back in when I came. Freshmen were not eligible, so I played freshman ball at the Armory, but Hilton was a big part, or certainly part of my recruitment. I stood down where Hilton was coming up around, when I came on my visit, and it was like, this is going to be really cool. So, and it wasn't like I had a choice of like a tremendous amount of the, great schools after me. I was thankful to have a great opportunity to come here, and here it is many years later. I'm still around, so I love it.
What made you choose Ames and Iowa State?
Well, I grew up, I was born in Marietta, Ohio, which is the southeastern part of the state, pretty rural area. And I was being recruited by a lot of smaller schools, some MAC schools, some Ivy League schools. But I got to know the coach at Marietta College. He'd been there for quite a while. He'd played at Ohio State. And I told him, I thought I could do better than Marietta College. I wanted to go to a higher level, which he appreciated and said, I think you can too. And then one day he called me and said, I'm taking an assistant coaching job at Iowa State. You want to go? And came out and visited, saw Hilton, and it was like, I'm in. Staff was completely fired after my freshman year. They were all gone. And Maury John came in, who had taken Drake to the Final Four and to the Elite Eight in the previous 3 years. So he was a tremendous coach. My coach that brought me in, Don Kelly, actually became an assistant for Norm Stewart at Missouri. And so he was there for a few years before he left. But so anyway, I did get to see him. And anyway, that was kind of the evolution of me getting to Iowa State.
And Maury John, that was a huge catch. I mean, he took Drake to the Final Four in '69. I didn't realize they had 2 additional.
Elite Eight in '71.
That's remarkable, and for Iowa State to get him, how did that transpire? And how, Marcus kind of went through a similar situation when Coach Eustace came on. What was that like for you to have a shift in or change in coaches?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, first of all, I didn't, not being from the area, I mean, I knew about Drake a little bit, but, the Final Four was not something that was, anything like it is today. But I had respect for him. We had played them. Our freshman team actually beat his freshman team, so I think he held us in a little higher regard than he did a lot of the players. But he was a tremendous coach. And I started out my sophomore year as probably the 6th guard when we started practice. And I ended the year starting. So I respected the fact that he appreciated the fact you keep working, you keep, chopping wood or whatever. You may end up getting there. And I did. And unfortunately, I had one more year with him completely. And then about 5 games into my senior year was when he discovered he had an inoperable tumor and did not coach again after that. So we had interim coach the last 20 plus games my senior year. So, but we entered the dark ages after he passed, and never would have happened had Coach John lived. And he was I think he was 53 or 54 when he died. So he had a lot of years ahead, and he was going to make Iowa State really put them on the map, and had really started to do that.
So you're right. There was some dark ages that happened after he left and passed away. So what was your experience like then after you graduated? I understand you went into a different career pathway and then found yourself sitting next to Pete Taylor.
Well, I was in advertising sales, and it's kind of funny. Pete, see, back in the days when I played and through into the early 80s, there was not an exclusive rights holder for Iowa State radio. So you would have multi-originators. WOI did it, KRNT had broadcast, and KMA, there were a number of people who broadcasted. And Pete had always done Iowa State basketball by himself. And he and I were good friends. His first game broadcasting basketball was also my first varsity game too. The first game at Hilton Coliseum. He did football the year before that. But anyway, we were living in Ames, and a guy I knew said, "Hey, do you want to do color on Ames High basketball?" And I said, "No, sure, why not?" And so Pete and I were playing tennis or racquetball or something after that. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to do Ames High basketball this year." And he said, "Oh, well, hell," he says, why don't you do Iowa State with me?" And I said, "Well, I committed to this." He says, "All right, next year." That was 46 years ago.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of good teams come into both Hilton and Jack Trice. Are there any teams that were your absolute favorite to watch? And you don't have to say Marcus's team just because he's sitting here, but let's be honest, that was a pretty damn good team too.
Oh, pretty good. I mean, it wasn't just Marcus. I mean, Marcus was fantastic.
Right.
That Tinsley cat was pretty good too. Maybe one of the best players to ever play here. That team, and the other pieces you had around, Mike, and Cantrell, Stevie, Paul and Martinez. It's a lot of really, really good players, and they had a toughness to them. That, like we were talking earlier, That's how you win on the road. You got to have some tough-minded dudes, and especially if they're tough-minded and they can play. I mean, you can be tough-minded and get your brains beat in, but these guys were talented. So that's certainly one of my favorites. I go back, Johnny Orr. When I think back to players, and I always go back to Ronnie Harris. I mean, because he was Coach O's first recruit, and he started every game of his career, and he never got to play in the NCAA tournament. They made the NIT his senior year, but what he meant to that team, and it's so much fun when you're climbing that hill and you're achieving. It's fun when you're up there. Don't get me wrong, but the rise is, man, that is such an unbelievable feeling. And Marcus, your final year, where you start out, you lose to Drake. Now you had a really good game against Cincinnati, but after that, I mean, it was unbelievable. But were we really believing how good you were? Until maybe middle of January or so, you're saying, wait a minute, we're as good as anybody. And that was fun. I mean, so that's one of the things I loved about your team. How did you feel about it?
Early on, dealing with someone like Larry Eustace and his coaching staff, it was really tough. I mean, it was. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. It was really, really tough. But that's the toughness that he brought out of us. And then about mid-December, we started to understand that toughness of how hard it was, or how hard we thought it was, begin to level out. He didn't back down off of how tough he was on us. It's just we were acclimated to what he expected, and we knew, what to expect. We could pretty much run practice ourselves. We were just that in tune. And when I really started to understand how good, the guys that were around me, it made it so much easier. I mean, before, scoring over double teams, trying to go over double teams, was just a mentality. I got to put the ball in the hole. But just understanding that I had Mike and Cantrell out there that would knock down threes, I started to welcome it and just move that ball. Even every once in a while, Stevie or Jamal would make a three. But we were just so in tune, even down to the freshman at the time, Brendan Hawkins. He even came off the bench with a lot of toughness, a lot of size, and a lot of tenacity, and played defense extremely well. So, by the time we got around it, like we lost to Oklahoma, we lost to Colorado, and both were in multiple overtimes, and we didn't expect to lose those games at all. Those games were tremendous losses for us, and we were pissed after losing those games. But we didn't expect, after losing to Cincinnati and we got on that road, we didn't expect to lose the rest of the year, period. I saw the trophy. I saw the national championship trophy in a magazine, and I remember saying to myself, I want that. I want us to have that, and that was the mentality that we had. And when we lost in Oklahoma, and then when we lost in Colorado, we understood that there was, a bump on the road. We understood the mistakes that we made in the end to not be the victors of that game, and we corrected it. And whoever we saw next were just coming out there to get this butt whooping that we were about to give them, and that's what we did. So that's just the mentality that we had.
I still can see Jacquay Walls hitting that half-court shot to force overtime at Colorado. It was like,
it's one of those
come on, man.
It's like one of those things, like, if he gets it off before the buzzer goes off, there's no way in hell is not going in. Like, it's like I remember, Steph Curry shooting it from half court almost, and Enes Kanter on the sideline, like, before the ball getting anywhere close to the rim, he's like, you just know it's going in. And so from there, and he had that game. What did he score in overtime? Like 10 points. He
ended up with like 42 or something. I think he had like 15 or something over. I mean, it was crazy. So he was cooking.
Yeah, Jacquay was really a talent as well, and so it was just one of those games, that we couldn't get, the reins back on. Hats off to them, and we lost that one, and we got back out there. But like you said, that was one of those ones that you knew once he made that shot, that we probably not going to leave here with this one.
Yeah, so that was probably, that team was unbelievable. The best team Iowa State's ever had. I mean, we've had some teams that maybe could challenge, but to All-Americans on the team. I mean, great role, great scheme, great heart. I love those teams too. Johnny's teams with. I went back to the Barry Stevens, that first time you make the NCAA tournament, and then the next year, love that team that gets to Iowa State's first Sweet 16 in over 40 years, and especially beating Michigan. I had such a great relationship with Coach Orr, and how much it meant. He was the winningest coach at both institutions. It ended up being, which is an unbelievable achievement. So, I mean, some of those Johnny Orr teams, with Fred and Lauren and Eulo and those guys as well. And then you go forward from that, and when Wayne had Curtis and Will Blaylock and those guys. I mean, I think they're underrated in Iowa State fans' memory. Really, really good players and good team. Jared Holman, Jackson Vroman on those teams as well. And then you get into the Hoiberg coaching era. And man, just a lot of fun guys, a fun style of basketball to watch. But now we are in a new world. I mean, it is the NIL, transfer portal, and nobody does it better than TJ Otzelberger, in my opinion. I mean, it's the mesh of, you got to have a plan. I mean, if you just look at talent, we've got good players. We're going to be preseason top 10. Jeff Goodman wrote a piece about it today on his field of 68, which is a pretty interesting thing if you ever want to follow something. But it was about our talent against the other top 10 teams. We don't have individuals who match up with 2 or 3 guys on those teams, yet we're as good as those teams and we can beat any of those teams. And he's done it just by putting together unbelievable defensive concept. But number one, bring in guys who fit. It's all about fit. Nick Saban said it the other day, talking about on game day, talking about players. You're going to pay players. You better pay the right ones, or you're going to be shit out of luck. That was his comment, and that's true. You got to make sure you get the guys that fit, will do what you want, and they have to be talented. And I think he's got a really good mix on 2 levels. One, he brings in freshmen, and he's developing freshmen each year. Whether it's Taman, Momchilovich. There's always a couple of freshmen, and then you figure out, okay, what do I need? What's going to help me put this puzzle together? And it's vetting those guys and making sure you're bringing the right guys in. And once again, we don't have the NIL budget of teams that we are, as good as or better than. And it doesn't matter, because you come down to, Marcus, we've talked about toughness. Those dudes that wear a cardinal and gold right now, they got a whole boatload of it.
They got a couple of them that's from out here in Vegas that I've coached against and have coached as well. And it's like I spoke earlier about Donovan, the new guy that just came in, Josh Jefferson. He's from here. Yep. I've coached against him since he was in elementary through junior high all the way through high school. And so to see those guys out there being able to get that opportunity to play at Iowa State definitely warms my heart, and I'm looking forward to the season start.
Did you coach against Keyshawn at all? When he went to prep out there one year.
Yes, he went to Durango High School.
Durango, okay.
A couple years, but I coached against him. His 8th grade going into 9th grade year in AAU, and he was talking the most shit to me on the court. I mean, just yapping. And so his dad was his coach, and his dad was getting on him about, talking to me. And he was like, Fonz, he don't understand it. But I told his dad, I said, man, I like that. Since that age, I've always said that kid right there is going to have this toughness that nobody's going to be able to match up against here in Vegas. And then, he played a couple more years in high school here, and then left and went to Kansas City and finished out, and came to UNLV for their first year. And but I just love his toughness and everything that he's been about. He has an older brother that's about a year and a half older than him. So both of them together in high school, with the toughness and the tenacity that they had at Durango High School, we did not like going up in there seeing them.
I remember not this summer, but the previous summer when all the players got in, Keyshawn's first go around, and I just remember watching him about 2 times. It was the second time I'd watched him practice, and I just said to TJ, "Well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I love everything about Gilbert. I mean, Keyshawn is tough. I watched him this summer, and of course, I watched him all last year. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but man, he cares. He is
Don't
a
get
tough
rattled.
dude. And when I watched practice this summer, I told TJ afterward, I said, "You remember I told you last summer? Well, I still love everything about Keyshawn. He's about winning. He's about winning every drill. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I mean, not that there aren't other guys out there that are competing like hell, but there's something about him. And plus, he's got a great smile, and I could just hear him giving you crap too."
Oh my goodness, every time he scored, he was like I said, he was a couple years older than Marcus Jr. So he was, there were our guards playing against him. He was more advanced, a lot better. So he was just getting anywhere that he wanted. And I'm trying to say, well, they 2 or 3 years younger than you and all kind of different crap, just trying to make up something. But man, he slaughtered us. we had no answer for him at all.
How does Hilton Coliseum compare with some of the other arenas that you've been, Eric?
Well, I'll say for one, because I've seen just about every game that's ever been played in Hilton from a men's basketball perspective, it has stood the test of time better than a lot of arenas that have been built, since then. I mean, they've taken great care of it. It's still it's a tremendous venue, crowd. I mean, great environment. Some of them have more amenities now. That's the nature of the game. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make them better arenas for a home court advantage. Suites are fantastic for the big cats.
Right.
But, to be honest, suites don't make noise. Suites don't make it happen unless, the people that have those suites are forking a lot of money out to buy some really good players. Other than that, it deadens the environment, in my opinion. But, Kansas still, it's great. There are a lot of really good arenas, but, year in, year out, good team, not so good team. There's no place in the country as better than Hilton Coliseum because it doesn't matter. I mean, they're going to care. It's going to be a tough out, no matter if you have a lot more talent or not. Iowa State's fans are going to be there. It's going to be a tough place to play. It's a great place to broadcast from. For us, it's got it all. So it's still number one in my heart.
Where's the one? Would you say Fog Allen would be the one opposition court that you most enjoy going to year after year?
Yeah. Probably because it's always going to be a competitive game, and the game against them always means something because they're always really good. On the other hand, we've had about as much success as anybody down there. Heck, we won when I played there. We beat them the worst they'd ever lost at Allen Fieldhouse, and they went to the Final Four the next year. So, it's one of those, kind of obscure things. But something about Allen Fieldhouse, it's loud. But on the other hand, it's a big old barn. It's kind of a dump, all right, inside, but it's not the amenities that make an arena, historic and a great arena, and Allen Fieldhouse has all that. You look at, Bramlage is fine. There's a lot of other ones that are fine. Texas Tech built a beautiful arena, and when they're good, it's hard. When they don't win, they can't get 3,000 people there. So, I say that's the difference right there in my mind about what makes Iowa State great. Cincinnati is going to be a problem going forward. They've been really good in the past. They're going to be good again, and they redid their arena, and that's a place that's going to be a problem. Really nice arena and a really passionate crowd. That's one of the new schools. Houston's arena is so small. It's still going to be a tough place to play because they're going to be damn good. But Cincinnati, I think, is going to be a problem going forward.
It feels like they're on top of each other too.
Yes. No question about it. But it's loud. And they weren't that great this year, but they care about basketball there. So when I was a little kid, they won, back-to-back national championships.
How is it? How are you able to keep your cool as a broadcaster when you see a game like Marcus had to play up in Auburn Hills against Michigan State in that Elite Eight game? What was it like from your perspective? We certainly heard from Marcus and what he went through. What was it like for you as a broadcaster?
You're making an assumption that I kept my cool.
Okay, that's what we want to hear.
I don't do the games for ABC or ESPN. I do the games for Iowa State fans, and I give a shit who wins, And I try to be objective for sure, but I care who wins. And when Iowa State's wronged, as we were in Auburn Hills, I'm going to say it, and I have no regrets about it. Sometimes it's hard to keep me in my seat, but I will say this, though. When I've had to miss basketball games because of football conflicts or miss a football game one year because of COVID, what I really hate is watching a game on TV. I don't know how – it's like I can't sit still. It's easier for me when I'm there doing the game. I'm into it, and it's not eating me up at all. I'm loving it. But if I'm watching at home and it's a close game, man, I can't stand it. It just drives me crazy. I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, I pace and do everything too.
It's basketball that drives me nuts because I can't get to every game, and certainly travel schedule, I can't get to every game either.
Yeah, you talk about pacing, Marcus. There's just if Iowa State's playing, there's a worn out patch for sure right in front of my TV where I'm just going back and forth.
It's the corner edge of my bed, like I straddle a corner edge and just sit there. And my wife be somewhere behind me. I know she be standing in the back of my head, but I just, have my little angle looking at it, have my angle where I can look off, grab my phone or whatever. It's kind of like a mind game thing where, okay, if I don't look at this play and, we make the play, at least I can watch the highlight. But if I'm watching and we don't make the play, then I think I'm watching too much. It's a lot that goes into it.
Oh, it's like even just watching like I was a Steeler fan, but grew up not that far from Pittsburgh, so I've been a Steeler fan my whole life. My wife knows not to sit next to me during the game because I'm just it's the same way. Oh yeah, I have to have my own space, when I'm watching the game. But doing a game, it's a little easier.
Right now, we're just trying to teach Marcus's staff at Twitter and off of the text change during some of these games.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right there. I've been trying to get a little bit better with the Twitter, but hey, come on.
I just want you to know I go back and I kind of go through the Twitter, the stream, through the game. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, it's really kind of funny sometimes. It's like, because here's a saying I've always had. It's like to have a great comeback, you really have to suck for a while first to get behind, and, but so Twitter being live, people are commenting when you're in your deep sucking mode.
Right.
and then the fun happens after that.
Yeah.
Eric, as we start to close out for the night, what has been your favorite Cyclone moment, whether it's basketball or football, if you want to choose one from each?
Wow. I would say basketball, it's one that not a meaningless game, but not a tournament game. It was when I mentioned Coach Orr before, when we played Michigan, about a few weeks before Johnny died, and we played him at home, and John Beilein was coaching Michigan, and when they brought Johnny out to here's Johnny, and that is something I'll never forget. I hadn't seen Johnny for a while, and you could just tell how much it meant to him. Here are the two programs, that had meant everything to him. Say the winningest coach at each program. And as he walked by and gave me that little nod, it was like, wow. And then to win the game, to me, of them all, and I know, say not a tournament game, not as consequential, but on a personal level for me, that was right up there. Just fantastic. Football, and I'll probably I mean, there've been quite a few winning at Oklahoma. I mean, I've seen wins at Nebraska. I've seen but I'm going to go to kind of the similar thing. 1998, Iowa City. Dan McCarney was on the ropes. I mean, he had his third year, and he got that extra year, and he thought he's got to have a good year. And we lost to TCU. Had been like 2-9 the year before, and we're up 21-14, I think, at halftime, and we end up losing. And I'm thinking, this is, he's got to have a good year. And we're going to Iowa, and we've lost 15 in a row. And this is awful. And man, they found a way to win that game. And Dan McCarney is one of the great people that have been around Iowa State. And so, once again, it's on a personal level. Once the game, we didn't get to a bowl game or anything like that. We did snap a streak that was significant, but at the same time, even though we didn't have a winning record, snapping a 15-game losing streak to Iowa certainly counts more than one win. Probably counted 3 that year, but it was enough for him to stay, and then boom, and then we're off and running. So, to me, I would say that game was. I've been at every Iowa State football game since they renewed the series in '77, and I look forward to being there Saturday and hoping for a result like '98.
Well, and
it won't be as big an upset.
Well, no, because that was 15 straight years, and we were getting blown out every year. This was
most of those years, yes.
I mean, it was 20, 30 points that we were losing by. They were ugly games.
Yeah, and once again, you had that feeling that, man, I don't think anything good's going to come today. But I remember seeing Margie, his wife, the night before at the hotel, and Pete and I were in the bar, and Margie came by, and I just said, "Hey, let's just keep a good thought. Let's just keep a good thought."
Any predictions for this game on Saturday?
I'm not big on predictions, but
I didn't ask for score necessarily. But
I feel
the game playing out.
If we win the turnover battle, we'll win. I mean, we lost the turnover battle 2 years ago down there. But the thing is, if we don't turn the football over, I think we can hold them, and we have enough on offense that we can score. Now, we haven't been able to not turn it over against them, so that's a big if. But I guess to me, that's maybe the single biggest thing.
All right, we're going to close you out here quick, but Brent, he texted in. He's sorry. He apologizes that he wasn't able to make it, but he really wanted to send out a heartfelt thank you to you for all that you've done for Cyclone.
When I saw the open, and they show big play going, before I saw that, and I knew he was going to be on tonight, I thought he was going to be on tonight, I wanted to ask him, what were you going through your mind? But one thing I will say, he's a quick learner, because his next 2 touchdowns he scored, which is unusual for a D lineman, he just took it in. So, no swan dive, no backflip.
No, he heard about it afterwards, though.
I'm sure he did.
All right, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on tonight's show. Again, for all of those that are listening later, hope that you can join us on Saturday at Coach's Kolaches, and you'll be able to see Brent, you'll be able to see the CEO, Conrad Howley, and then you'll be able to finally meet Dan Douglas with Green Beret Realty, one of our newest sponsors for the show. Eric, again, it's been a pleasure, and that's been another edition of In the Side of the Storm. Thanks, everyone.